So the book is loosely framed around a year of cooking lessons that I did with my oldest son, Jonah. It was about a year before he went away to college. I was feeling some anxiety, and I had this idea, I'll teach him how to cook. I'll give him this basic life skill, equip him with this before he goes off into the adult world. So we started doing the cooking lessons. I conceived of it as maybe a book idea, but it didn't quite seem complete. And what fleshed it out, what started to fill it in, was when I allowed in some memories about when I was my son's age. So when I was 18, I moved from Indiana to Boston. I started a band, the Blake Babies, and kind of created a new life for myself as a musician out there. And it became really easy to allow some of those memories into the story because food was part of that story too. Trying to subsist on very little money, being a broke musician, trying to eat on the road as a vegetarian, which I was at that age. And so as I kind of opened the door to those memories and recollections, a fuller picture started to form, and recipes were a really natural part of it too. I was fortunate enough to stumble into the college rock scene of late 80s Boston when I was 18 years old, which was a really exciting, really varied, really vibrant scene where bands like the Pixies, bands like the Throwing Muses, bands like Galaxy 500 were arising, supporting each other. And my band, the Blake Babies, formed in the midst of that. The members included Juliana Hatfield, who went on to have a really successful solo career, and in the early days, Evan Dando, who was in the Lemonheads. Maybe more people would have heard of them. So the Blake Babies formed, we put out our own first record, eventually signed to a label, and toured in a very grassroots way as part of the college rock scene. So college radio was a really big part of that, and just the growing scene of networks of clubs and venues and college radio stations around the country. Kind of. So I've had a lot of stops and starts. I left Boston and moved back to Indiana, which is where I'm from. I'm thinking maybe I would phase out of playing music, but in fact I transitioned into a post-Blake Babies band called Antenna, which is where I met my husband. As that band fell apart, my husband and I started a band called The Mysteries of Life, which was based out of Indiana. We did a couple records with RCA, and then as that dwindled, again I thought maybe I'm not playing music anymore, but in fact it's something that seems to keep coming back into my life. And in fact I'm playing a show in Chicago next month and one in Indiana next month, so it's still part of my life. So I work at Northwestern. I'm an academic advisor and a lecturer. That's one of my current careers. I'm also a food writer. I interview musicians for Paste Magazine about what they eat on the road and what they eat at home. And I sometimes write pieces in a series that I call Dinner in a Disc, in which I pair an album with a meal and write about that. So food and music, very much my things. I also teach a class at Northwestern about food and identity that looks at different multimedia food platforms and how those establish identity and how they communicate and connect them. And what other things am I doing career-wise? And like I said, I'm still playing drums, and I'm promoting my book. People love to talk about food. It definitely connects on a really deep level. And for myself personally, when I look at my life, it looks kind of chaotic from a distance. So I played in indie rock bands all these years. I'm a drummer. I'm an academic also, which seems kind of out of step with that. I'm a mom. I have 2 sons. I've been a yoga teacher. I've been a baker. And now I'm a writer, and that's something that I've just been doing for a couple of years. So it looks a little chaotic, it looks a little bit random, but when I set out to write a memoir, I found that food connected these dots in these really powerful and interesting ways. And I think that's true for a lot of people, and definitely for me, whether it was, like I mentioned, kind of trying to survive and subsist for very little money in my early musician days, trying to navigate being a vegetarian and my ethical concerns about food, or looking to food also as a form of creativity, a form of expression, a means of improvisation, and then finally trying to pass this basic skill onto my sons just to help prepare them for the world and to help me feel like I was passing this thing that's really important to me on to them and sharing it with them. So it works on a lot of levels, but for me, it's this form of cohesion in my life that I think my life wants and needs. Maybe. I was thinking about writing a cookbook where I solicited recipes from musicians, so a rocker's cookbook. That's an idea that I've just been kicking around. But I'm not sure. I spent a lot of time working on the recipes in my book. There are about 45 recipes, and I think they're strong. I think they're good. It was a lot of work, so I'm having second thoughts about doing a cookbook next. But I'm writing a lot for Paste and for some other outlets, and I think I'm just going to let some of my ideas percolate for a while and see what comes up.